Welcome to the Sip and Say It podcast with your host, Carlos, a.k.a. Los, a podcast that promises to deliver a raw and unfiltered experience as we dive into the one-on-one conversations about a wide array of topics. We're inviting listeners to engage in candid discussions, personal stories, and diverse perspectives. Say what's on your minds. Let's create an open space for honest dialogue. As a village, let's immerse ourselves on trending issues, personal anecdotes, thought-provoking themes. Nothing is off limits. Tune in and become part of the conversations. Let's sip and say it together.
Whoa, welcome people. Welcome back to Sip and Say It. This is your host, Los, and my co-host. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. This is Kevin, a.k.a. Kev.
Kev. Sounds like your mic is pretty strong right there. Like it's kind of coming across really strong. But look, folks, we're diving into another episode of Sip and Say It. And this one, it's one that's going to be about thought-provoking questions that really make you think. Now, we just took a little bit and kind of we're attempting to do some deep dive and some questions, right? So, we're looking at questions that, that are powerful, right? That can challenge our beliefs or inspire creativity and even lead us to some profound insights about ourselves or the world around us. We'll explore several thought-provoking questions, and some of them are fun, some of them are controversial, right? But yeah, we're just going to encourage you and our listeners to reflect on them as we're going along, right? So let's start with a classic, Kev. What is the meaning of life? Now, before you even answer that, right? So this is a question that's puzzled humanity for centuries, right? Some might even find the meaning in relationships, others in achievements. Some conclude that life is just inherited meaning at all. I mean, like, what's your thought?
Well, the geeky side of me would answer that question that 42 is the meaning of life.
Elaborate. You got to school me on this one.
So there is a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And one of the questions that's presented there is the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. And the supercomputer named Deep Thought in that book just says that the answer is 42, and then is left to interpretation. So that's the geeky part of my answer is 42. As for what the meaning of life is, that's going to be a different answer for everybody. Some people would place that on relationships. Some people might say the meaning of life is to earn the most money you can until you're gone. Some people say it's to have the most love you can in your life. So I think it's left to interpretation. That's why I kind of like the answer 42, because it makes no sense, but it makes sense to somebody.
Yeah. Well, listen, let me chime in on that, right? When I sit there and start thinking about what's the meaning of life, right? And I think we were created for a reason. We were created, to inhabit where we're at in life, this earth, right? I would like to say that we were created in a sense to do good and create more of us down the line, right? Legacies, people, our people, to continue to bring a message across the universe, that we exist and we believe in a higher power. I mean, I'm sure there's some people that believe in higher power. I do. I believe in Jesus and, what he sacrificed for us at the end of the day. But other than, just coexisting or creating life, I think is also to build family, the families, the memories, the enjoyment of of eventually falling in love, eventually getting married, and creating little clones of yourself at the end of the day, right? So, I mean, when I think of
So,
that,
so I guess what I'm, correct me if I'm wrong. So what I'm hearing you say is the meaning of life is life itself, that it's started and its goal is to continue to procreate and continue propagating itself. And then that all the joys and the tribulations and everything that we come across in each particular life is the meaning of life.
yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean,
That's
and
very
even
good.
and here's a fun thought provoking question, in a sense that, you know, as we talk about life and the creation of life on Earth, right? How would humans react if aliens really arrived on Earth? What do you think about that?
Well, since I personally think that we can't be the only life in the universe. Now, whether it's anything like us, that's a different story. I think life can be something as simple as a microorganism 374 million light years away. Um, but I also, because you did mention Jesus and religion, I know that there are some people, because of religious beliefs, refuse to believe in aliens because otherwise they would be in the Bible. And if there are aliens, then somehow that throws a wrench into their faith system.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, I've had that discussion with some people, and they said, no, it's not in the Bible. God created us in his image. He didn't create anybody else. So you can't really argue with that point.
Right. But you know what? When you do a deeper dive into things, right? Like, look at some of the, what we call those hieroglyphics
Mm-hmm.
that are found around, Egypt and man, all over the world. Some of them have actually shown somewhat what looks like a spacecraft of some sort. And these pictures that these people in their times have
Right.
drawn,
Right.
or I mean, I believe that most of those things that are either depicted on walls or in concrete or whatever they've done it. Um, it's a depiction of what they've seen or what they've experienced. What do you
Mm-hmm.
think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, like, for example, Ra, the sun god. Who's to say that it's not an alien? The only way they knew how to depict that was the sun, because the sun's way up in the sky. So
Mhm.
every image they have of a sun, maybe they're trying to depict some type of spacecraft or a being that actually came from the skies. And that was the only way that they could describe it so that everyone understood it. It was this bright, brilliant thing that looked like a sun.
Interesting.
And scientists still can't explain how you can't even stick a sheet of paper in between the stones for the pyramids. Like, they don't know how we had that technology back then, because
Yeah,
that's
that
something that it needs laser cutting and everything else, and they didn't have that back then. And so it's a lot of unexplained things that we can't say we're aliens, but we don't have an explanation for them yet. So
yeah, that's definitely way beyond me. That's for sure. I could definitely admit that. So let's dive into some controversial, thought-provoking questions. Right. So here's one: if you watch someone kill themselves and don't try to stop them, are you responsible? Man, that one just dropped me. I'm like, wow. If I saw someone kill themselves and I didn't intervene, am I responsible? There's a part of me that says I feel like I kind of am, because
well, I understand where you're going with that, but you mind if I ask you a personal question?
Go.
So, in your former line of work,
Mm-hmm.
let's say you're in a situation where you have a perp who has a gun, and they are either going to be a danger to themselves or a danger to everyone else around them. And they have the gun around, they're aiming at themselves. You're telling them to put the gun down, put the gun down. How do you defuse that situation? I mean, are you supposed to shoot them, not to kill them? Or at that point, is your job to protect everyone around them? And if they kill themselves, they shoot themselves, then, you did the best you could for everyone else. I don't think you would be responsible at that point. Your job was to protect everyone, as many people as you could, protect and serve. And in that instance, you could not serve the public interest by protecting that individual.
You're right. I think every scenario kind of is a little different, and you would handle every situation completely different. So if we're gonna elaborate about my public service time, right? In a sense, that would be a situation where obviously your first move is that you're going to leave or make sure that there's no one around that could be hurt,
Mm-hmm.
and that you seclude yourself or position yourself where you're just having that contact with that person. And as long as that person doesn't have I mean, that person could have that weapon displaying off their waist or stuff like that. I mean, obviously, you're going to be in position to try to attempt to de-escalate that situation and give orders, but you're not going to, obviously shoot the guy. Now, he, pulls the gun out and, you know, in that situation, he attempts either to point it at you or someone else that could probably be in the general area. Then you're going to have to do what you need to do. But in this situation, even just let's take it back even a little further back. If you just happen to walk into a McDonald's and a person sitting on their chair, in the restaurant and pulls a gun out and basically, could be a behavioral situation, a mental health situation, and is talking to himself and looks like he's in a threatening manner to himself that he's going to hurt himself. Do you intervene? Do you say something? And my situation, instantly the first thing that would come in my mind was try to stop it, like in the sense of I don't want to put myself in a predicament, obviously, where the gun then gets turned towards me or anyone else, but to try to talk to him, um, to again de-escalate that situation, and he could put the gun down. But if I don't say anything and the guy's just doing what he's doing, whether they're talking to themselves or they're again going through a crisis and commits the ultimate act on himself, do you really are you responsible because you didn't say anything or attempt to stop that person, right?
Right.
So, and I think that's a really tough question. I mean, I think obviously we all want to preserve life, but obviously the people around us and we ourselves got to protect ourselves, um, from falling into that situation where we get hurt because we attempted to
Right.
do something. So yeah, I mean that's a tough question, man.
Yeah, and we can try to get philosophical as far as maybe talk about the right to end of life, as far as someone who's terminally ill. So in that case, if you have someone who's a loved one who's sick and terminally ill, and you've seen them suffer, and they say to you, I don't want to fight anymore. I'm done. Please let me go. And then whatever it is, you let them inject themselves or whatever it is, are you then responsible for their death?
Jeez.
because the only thing they ask of you is to be there with them while they're gone. Do you stop them? But then at that point, they've already been miserable. They got to the lowest point that they can get, that they're begging you to let them go. What is actually the humane thing to do? And, are you really responsible? Do you have the humane side of things and you realize he or she has suffered enough? Or do you say, nope, life is a gift and you're going to be here as long as you're supposed to be here. And when you go of natural causes, then you go.
Wow. So let's dive into another section, was kind of morality and ethics, right?
That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Right. So we go into a little challenging one. Is it ever okay to lie? So this question kind of opens up a can of worms about ethics and morality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Consider situations where a lie might protect someone's feeling or save a life, right?
Right.
But then think about the potential consequences of dishonesty. So how do we balance truth and compassion, right? What do you think about that?
Well,
Is
that
it
is
ever okay to lie?
That is a very, very tough question, because is it ever okay to lie? I mean, from a Christian standpoint, the answer is no, right? It's supposed to be no. You're not supposed to lie. From a human standpoint, or to borrow the phrase of previous guests, realistically, being bluntly honest with people about some things is not the humane thing to do. And I'm going to say this as a joke, and if we get any feedback, I apologize. But does my butt look big in this question that you ever get? Every guy knows what the answer is, right? Let's be honest. I mean, sometimes it's no, it doesn't look big in that. But sometimes, like, you think to yourself, maybe she should go change that or whatever, right? So what is the right answer to that? Do you go ahead and say, yeah, your butt looks 3 times larger than it normally is? And then you expect to go out and have a great afternoon or a great evening or a great date after you said that?
Yeah.
I mean, you were just being bluntly, you were being honest, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you're getting kickback, and you're going to get some severe feedback from that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's some backlash.
Yeah, so I know they call them white lies because they don't do harm, but lies are lies, whether they're small or big. And is it ever okay? I know I'm going to take the moral ground on this one. Yeah, I'm going to say, in some instances, it's best to, you have to say what you have to say to protect someone's feelings, or not to have a situation blow up larger than it's blowing up.
True. I mean, think about it, right? Every lie snowballs and becomes bigger, and the potential of it then blowing up really in your face, it's that's a situation that you're going to have to deal with by doing the lie.
Right.
So I'm always going to go with the thought of try to be as honest as you can. Now, delivery is always how you deliver that.
How you deliver,
soften
absolutely.
the blow, right?
Right.
So I mean you got to be tactful about that stuff. And again, if it's for me anyway, to avoid saying a lie, and I got to tell you the truth, then I'm going to be as tactful as I could possibly can, being cognizant of your feelings and cognizant of what the repercussions are of me telling you the truth. But just find a way to deliver it in a way where the truth comes out. Could it sting? Yeah, but at least you got it, and I didn't lie, right?
Okay. I mean, I could always, the tactful way for me, if I have to ever answer that question, would be, I'm not sure, but I don't really like that outfit on you. I'd rather you do something wear something different, right? In that case, you're not lying. You're just changing the outfit until you can give an honest answer, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah, but it's a tough one because in relationships, feelings are very important. You ask me a question, I could be just upfront and honest with you, and no harm, no foul, no hard feelings, because we're doing it from a place of love with each other. But when you're in a partner relationship, sometimes feelings do come out, and this could be an episode at some other point, but that 27 months, 8 hours, and 32 minutes later, whatever you said today is going to pop out in another conversation, and you're going to be reminded about what you said.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Wow. So look, in the spirit of the month of October, Halloween, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's a question. And I know you just experienced a kind of like a tour or excursion kind of in a sense, but is there an afterlife?
100%.
Do you believe in spirits? Do you believe that, there's hauntings? If there's not hauntings, but is there an afterlife?
100%. I've had experiences as a child. I've had experiences as an adult. Even we refer back to the Bible when in Acts, when Jesus first came back to his disciples, he tells them not to be afraid that he is not a spirit or he's not a ghost, depending on which version of the Bible you read. So if Jesus himself is saying that he's not a ghost, then that means that there are ghosts. That's how I see it.
So tell us a little bit about the excursion that you just took. And I'll probably ask you to reflect a little bit back in your first experience and then this second go around.
Yeah, so last year we went to a group of friends and I went to a place called Fort Delaware. It is on an island called Peapatch Island, and it's in Delaware, outside of Delaware City. We took this tour. If you look it up on YouTube, you'll see plenty of information on it. It is classified and known as a highly haunted place due to its history during the Civil War. It was open and in use until World War II, I believe. And at times it was also used as a prisoner of war camp. So there were a lot of suffering, a lot of atrocities that happened there. And last year when we did the tour, we experienced many things. One of the things that we experienced, for example, is there is something called a voice box that it basically picks up signals in the air and you can hear voices come through. It like takes the
signals?
It takes like an electrical signal and converts it to a voice type of thing. We were in this one room where they were asking questions, and then you can hear faintly coming through the voice box like answers to the question.
So there were responses.
Very faint, but you could hear them.
But was it like an intelligence response?
Yes. I mean, it would be something like, yes.
Wow.
I wear blue. Stuff like that. As our tour went on, you can tell because we were the last group I think that went through there. So they were telling us that there was a lot of activity in that particular building we were in, and they tell us that the spirits get tired because it requires a lot of energy to do all the stuff like that they do. We had things are dowsing rods that are you basically hold these things in your hand and they move all over the place. Like you just hold them straight and they swivel on their own.
Okay.
And you start asking questions, and then these things like start pointing in the direction of answers of things questions you're asking.
Right.
For example, as a joke, we asked the question of, do you know who Grace is? Grace was one of the people in the group. And these things immediately, both of them shot over and pointed to the actual lady named Grace. And then once it did that, they went back to swiveling all over the place. So we asked again to make sure. And as soon as we said, do you know who Grace is? They swung right back over to her. And then people are asking all kinds of questions, and someone gets curious and wants to know if the spirit is a male or a female.
Right.
Nothing's happening, and they say, can you tell us if it's a male or a female? Please, are you a man or a woman? And then slowly they moved past a bunch of people and ended on a woman.
Wow.
And then we were told that there are instances, the spirit that's reported there has been seen many times is that of the female cook that used to be there. So we have all this going. They tell us spirits get tired, and finally the voices that were pretty faint to start with started fading, so they're barely legible. So the tour guy says, all right, we know you're tired. We're ready to leave. If you really want us to know that you're here, can you do anything at all? And at that point, I mean, the entire group is in the center of the building. We're nowhere else, and it's a pretty big building, right? So we're all there. When he says that, it almost feels like every door in the building slammed shut, and it made everybody jump.
Jeez.
Yeah, and that was some of the experiences we had. We had one person in a group that did not believe in any of that. I kept saying, oh yeah, you guys are doing this, you guys are doing that. At the end of the night, when everyone goes to the public restrooms, I go into the male room, and then that lady happens to go into the female room on the other side. And all of a sudden, I hear her scream. So I run out because I knew who it was, and I want to make sure she was okay. Apparently, the naysayer had the toilet that she was using explode on her.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Jeez. That's some weird stuff, man. I tell you. I mean, I'm sure they got all their electronics, their REM pods or whatever they call them.
They have all that kind of stuff, yeah. And they're going off. Yeah, you see all the lights. I unfortunately happen to be alone in certain rooms when those things go off, and then the hair on your arms just stand all up because you're like, uh-oh, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to get out of here. So,
Wow. So let's go into questions about life, right? If you found out the world was ending in a year, how would you spend your time? Now, remember that the world will be ending in a year for everyone else too. So how would that affect your options? So if you know that your world is ending in a year, how would you spend your time?
Basically with loved ones.
Yeah.
Right.
The crazy part is I would probably do a whole year-long party, and I was try to get as many of my
friends and loved ones together. Yeah. There's no point in looking for anybody new. No. Everybody, the year everybody's done. So gather those around you, keep them close.
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, listen, I'm that person that the more the merrier. I'm definitely going to go search out my family and try to get them all together. And my dad always used to say to me, Los, when I'm gone, your job is make sure you keep them together. A scenario like that, knowing that within a year we're all gone, man, I'm going to try to get every single last one of that, at least those that want to come, right? And enjoy our moments, create moments right there. Everybody loves food, right? So, you cook, you listen to music and enjoy everybody's time. And the other portion to this, right? Seek out those family members or friends at the end of the day that either you're no longer communicating with, or, something's set a wedge between you guys, right? At the end of the day, seek them out and make good in those relationships, right? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the year, you want to just go in peace with everybody else, not have any Any regrets?
Yeah, not at all, man. I mean, listen, party for a year, rekindle relationships. Man, tell everybody you love them because in a year you're absolutely not there. You're not
Hmm.
going to be around. Wow. So, are you a book person?
I am.
So let me ask you this: what book had the most significant impact on your life? A book that you read?
Um, it's a. If I answer this question, I can't tell you why it is what it is. Um, it's a book called Shadow of the Wind, or Shadows of the Wind. It is a book that was written in Spanish, but I read the translated version in English. I don't know what about it I like so much that I've read it about 4 times, which is the most I've read any book.
Hmm.
And the story is kind of messed up in a way. It is about this boy who falls in love with this girl, and they keep secretly meeting each other in this dilapidated mansion. And as the story goes along, you start learning about their history, their family's history, and at the end of everything, you discover that they are brother and sister.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I don't know why I like reading a book about incest. And I read it four
Okay.
times. I don't know what that says.
Okay. Well,
Um,
that's definitely controversial there. Okay.
but
Okay.
I just I like the way the story unfolds, and you can see as you're reading, you know there's a tragedy that's about to happen.
Okay.
And then there's nothing you can do yourself to prevent that tragedy. You feel for the characters because it's their parents. It's the sin of their parents that have got them into that situation. And as you're
Right.
going, the story unfolds, you actually already, you're smart enough. You're like, oh my gosh, this better not be what I think it is.
Right.
And it is. And yeah, so I think that was the book that I read 4 times. And I even read the Spanish version just to see if there's any difference in it. And no. And again, I can't really tell you. I mean, I know that the correct answer would be, well, Carlos, it's the Bible. Of course, that's the one that had the most impact on my life. And it has.
Mm.
It has a huge impact on my life. But if we're just going to talk about everyday books, yeah, that one, Shadow of the Wind.
Interesting. So I'm probably going to be corny because I can't really say I've dove into a book with some sort of storyline or anything like that, but I've always been one to be intrigued of gaining more knowledge in leadership and understanding leadership and all the leadership styles and characteristics. A couple books that I have read have been from John Maxwell. Um,
Those are good books. I've read plenty of his books. Yeah.
yeah, there's some leadership stuff there. I mean, having the ability to go to some of these leadership schools and lots of quotes and subject matter that gets pulled from a lot of authors. I've had the chance to kind of scour multiple books about leadership, and I think it narrows down when you again do a deep dive into leadership is meeting your people where they're at, right? I've learned that is you can't keep going through life. Well, that's the way we've always done it, right? You got to be transformational. You got to open your mind to how this world is operating, and believe it or not, at the end of the day, is answering your people's whys.
Hmm.
That's where we've transformed to. But just you got to be innovative. You got to build that trust with people. You got to be transparent. Um, and then there's times that you got to eventually draw the line in the sand as well, right? To make sure that you don't, um, people will like to take your weakness or your kindness for weakness. I was about to say that the wrong way. Your kindness for weakness, and Those are the moments where you definitely have to draw the line in the sand. And there's one guy that I've loved, and I gotta definitely do a deep dive in his book. But here's the one author. His name is Jim Collins, right? He has a book that's called Good to Great, and he made a remarkable discovery about high performing organizations. And in his research, he found that while many of the leaders first decide where to take the organization and then focus on assembling the people to get it there, truly transformational leaders take a different approach. They often first get on, or they, let me say that right, they focus on getting the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats on the bus. So, in other words, great leaders assemble their teams before they decide where they should go. And that's a book that I'm definitely going to do a deep dive into, because that's interesting, right? Because if you're a manager, you're a director somewhere, you're CEO, whatever, you want to be able to get the right people, um, as he says, on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus, and then more importantly, get the right people in the right seats on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty unique. But yeah, I'm kind of like nerdy that way when it comes to in the books. I'd rather do deep dives into some of the leadership stuff down the line, and yeah, kind of
Yeah.
do that.
Self-help books are good, brother. I mean, that's what helps us become better people,
Yeah, definitely.
Uh,
So I'm look for one more, unless you got one. You want to toss one out?
uh, Phillies or Mets?
Ooh, geez, we just saw what the Phils came back, right? So I'm gonna say on this game 3 is gonna be Nola. And he's gonna be red hot. We just need these bats to wake up.
Yeah.
They need to wake up. So I'm gonna say the Phils. I'm gonna
Okay.
stick with the Phils. Yeah. Ooh. So here's a question, so we can try to wrap up. Do you think it's scary to think about how much of our life is formed by things that are out of our control, or how much of our life is formed by the things that are within our control? So I'll repeat that again. Do you think it's scary to think about how much of our life is formed by the things that are out of our control, or how much of our life is formed by things that are within our control?
It's a good question, and I mean, I hate to say it, but I think it's a combination of both.
Hmm.
Because you can have all the control you want in your life. You control what time you get up. You control what time you go to the bathroom. You control what you eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner. You can even, maybe you're a boss at work, you might even control what everybody else does and what you do. And that's your control.
Hmm.
But then everyone else has their own controls. And their controls don't necessarily coincide with yours. So you might, for example, you're traveling on a plane, you're going somewhere. The control you had in your life put you on that plane. But now you have a pilot who maybe didn't have a good day. And now all of a sudden, you don't have any control at all of what happens at that point.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
And how many times do you hear of relationships, or people in relationships with someone who was born in a completely different part of the world, and yet somehow they met? If you stop to think about that, somebody who's born, for example, I don't know, say somebody's born in Chile, and he has somebody who's born in France. They both migrate to the United States, and they meet, fall in love, and become a couple. What things outside of the control actually allow that to happen or cause that to happen?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a thought right there, right? I mean, I think, yeah, we don't know. We would love to say that we could control what direction we're heading in life. I mean, I think the first objective was for them to get here, right? America's great, and they want to experience the American dream and the opportunities that are presented, right? And they got here. Um, and by chance, they uniquely find a way to meet each other. I mean, I don't think they either one planned it,
Right,
but
definitely. The little boy in France was speaking French, we. Never thought he was going to meet a Maria, in his life at some point. And maybe Maria's family was escaping persecution, and that's what changed their world and changed their control to make them come here. And
yeah,
Francois came over here because he found a decent job. He wasn't escaping anything. He was just coming to America because his company he worked for in France opened up an office here and offered him a position.
yeah, yeah. Life is I can't even get the right word for it, but I mean it's wild. It's just you know what is meant to be is meant to be. I would
Right.
love to to say that you know there's a higher power, that there's a person for every person, right?
Exactly. And what you have as a plan for yourself is not exactly his plan for you.
Right. Wow.
So,
Definitely. Yeah, this is as we wrap up today's episode, you know, I guess we could both say that we would like to encourage everyone to take some of these questions and reflect on them for throughout the week or whatever, and maybe ask their own friends and family, and they just might be surprised by some the conversations that eventually unfold, right? And ultimately, just got to remember that the journey of thought is often more important than the answers that we find, right? So, look, without a shadow of doubt, man, again, thank you for joining us here at Sip and Say It. And, this was we did call it about some thought provoking questions, right? And hope you got to enjoy today's questions. I'm sure there's a million more questions out there that could be really much more impactful. But I hope you get to enjoy it and take an opportunity to subscribe to us. You can follow us at Sip and Say It and Facebook. You could actually send us comments or suggestions on the next go around at Sip and Say It podcasts at gmail.com. And Kev, what's the other one?
info@sipandsayit.com, as well as our website. You can go there and get whatever information you need at sipandsayit.com.
Yeah, absolutely, folks. And just like we wrap up each single one, man, we'll try to have that real talk one sip at a time, man. Thank you, folks. Have a great night.
On behalf of your host, Los, thank you for joining us this week on Sip and Say It. Without you, the village, and the participation on Sip and Say It, the universe will never know what's on your mind. Subscribe to Sip and Say It on media platforms like Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Pocket Cast, and our very own Facebook page at Sip and Say It. Email us with your thoughts about the episode or topics you'd like to hear to be discussed at sipandsayitpodcast@gmail.com. Tune in next for our next episode. We can sip and say it together.